welcome to the Gooners podcast. This is a NousCast, which will be hosted by Eoin. I don't know why I'm starting this out, but we are, the worse the game is, the better the guests we like to have on are. So we have used that strategy this week to pull two outstanding podcasters whose faces should be, for better or for worse, recognized by everybody. And I'm not talking about Eoin. Thank you for joining us, Danny, the GFP from Burtcamp Wonderland, and from being Danny. We love you, and Soph in the middle, early afternoon from La La Land, joining us from just outside La La Land, I believe.
Yes, I'm actually closer to Huntington Beach, along the coastline here near Newport, and I'm wearing sunglasses, not because I'm a California wanker. I actually have a little bit of an eye issue, and coincides with my dog having an eye issue, and also trying to overcome an Arsenal defeat yesterday that broke my eyes.
That's the real reason. I mean,
that's the real reason.
Yeah, and I'm here despite possibly, maybe, potentially having COVID. We'll find out in a couple of days.
Oh, what?
Just had my first test today.
Rest in peace, Mike.
With the nose thing, they stick it right up your nose.
Well, it was a self-test. It was like a drive-through thing, so I had to be the sticker upper of the nose. But yeah, I mean,
what are your symptoms, Mike? What's going on?
My symptoms are I've been throwing things at the television. I've been screaming.
Is that when Arsenal are playing or not?
Yeah, I mean, it may just one of the screening questions they ask is like, do you have a cough? Are you short of breath? Did you watch the Arsenal Wolves game on Sunday? Because there's a lot of reasons you could be feeling like shit right now. So We'll find out. Maybe we'll have that big. We'll do a spoiler and we'll do it at the end of the show on Wednesday. But in any case, couldn't miss the opportunity to be with you guys. And Eoin, as always, I finally 80% of the time get your name right.
Mm-hmm. Still haven't included me into that video, though, have you?
That's one of those things that falls
so rude.
Andy's job. So it'll be done by season 8.
Yeah. No, well, here, if you think that we're taking the loss bad, and not to make a joke out of a sort of tragic situation, but apparently, did I read a headline that in the States, somebody was actually murdered yesterday because they slagged off 2 Arsenal fans after the defeat, and somebody got killed. I think that's true. Let me look this up.
Where?
No, I actually hadn't.
I have not heard that.
Yeah,
Soph and I have our fingers and other things on the pulse of Arsenal America.
I'll look it up later. I've seen it on Twitter, but Twitter always tells.
You weren't on one of those dodgy.
I mean, people get
on
killed.
A lot of dodgy websites, so
people.
Fighting isn't one thing that it entails, but I'll look it up later on once we.
What a shitty reason to get killed, though. I mean, although they might have been doing him a favor, but anyway,
it's understandable. No, anyway, yeah, we'll crack on with the game. But look, before we sort of get into the game and the sort of building situation around Arsenal, you can't talk about this match without covering one thing from the start, and it happened quite early on, Danny, which was the clash between David Luiz and Raul Jimenez, the Wolves striker. Absolute nasty clash, and the immediate sound of it sort of just, the siren light started ringing straight away, and the reaction of the players was just awful. What did you make of that situation as you saw it unfold?
Well, the first thing I thought was, because I have no compassion for other human beings, I thought, fuck me, that's it, he's going off yet again. So I looked it up. 53 games for Arsenal.
I love a self-aware man.
David Luiz, 53 games he's played for Arsenal. 9 times now. He's either been sent off, subbed off, or sent off. I think I said sent off twice. 9 times.
Yeah. I love that, though.
Every 5 games he's going off for one reason or another, or he's killing someone. Poor old Jimenez is their best player, and we still couldn't beat them. But to go off with a fractured skull and have to go to hospital, wow. That is the kind of stuff you don't expect to see in modern-day football. That is horrendous. I didn't hear it, and they didn't replay it, and I haven't really gone to listen to it again or find out again. But I remember thinking when they were laying on the floor, always look for the player that's moving. If the player isn't moving, then you know someone is in a lot of trouble. And then
that the other players. I mean, he got the Ramsey treatment of get the hell out. No, it wasn't waving. It wasn't fanning his face.
Oh,
they were
I've got brain damage. Oh,
calling for the.
She'll cool me down. Fucking hell.
Tried to start this off on a soft note, but look, no, I heard it, and as I've probably mentioned most podcasts, I grew up doing sort of combat sports between kickboxing and boxing, and when you hear a sound like that coming from somebody, you know, a head collision like that, I'll not lie, and Mike, you were in the same WhatsApp group, I put it in, he's dead. I genuinely thought the guy was dead. But, you know, that was a full sprint, 2 big guys like that right onto the side of the head. And he's very, very lucky to be alive, I think. But, Sophie, something that really disappointed and surprised me was that David Luiz remained within the game. He was checked over by Arsenal's medical staff and they had deemed him fit. What did you make of the fact that they let him continue to play for that throughout the rest of that half?
I thought in today's age, it was hugely irresponsible. And maybe that's because I live in the United States and concussions are taken very seriously here, especially after what happened with the NFL. I reached out to Taylor Twellman, actually, and he very kindly responded today. He was very busy yesterday because of all the MLS playoffs. But Taylor Twellman is a very well-known footballer here, played for the New England Revolution and the US men's national team. He actually had to end his career because of concussions. He has an organization now where he literally, in his spare time, just pioneers doing the right things when athletes get injured with head injuries and making people realize that it's really serious. And not only in the moment, but I actually had a mild concussion a couple of years ago through a paintball incident. And I was thinking to myself, wow, I just got a pellet on my neck. And a day later, I was vomiting violently and had to be rushed to hospital. So I can only imagine what the impact over and over is for athletes with their head. And I challenged John Cross yesterday because John Cross was talking about this. And I said, well, I think it's time that journalists in the UK shone a light much brighter. And he's like, oh, have you been living in the States too long? We've been talking about this for a long time. And I said, no, just feels like you've been talking about it this year more than ever, maybe because of Nobby Stiles passing away and then some, you know, of the other stories that have come to fruition. So for me, I also spoke to Rebecca Lowe this morning and did an interview with her for our show.
This is for the absolutely welcome and top name dropping. I mean that's a good.
I've done that in the first 5 minutes. Have I killed it? I'll have more. But the point is,
keep it coming. You know this is the show where we do that as much as we can.
Rebecca was talking about how Tim Howard and Robbie Earle right away were like, oh my God, and what Rebecca said was, she said, as the minute a player is injured, they know that as a player, they feel it, they know. And Kevin Campbell says the same thing. You just know if it's bad, if it feels like it's, you know, the players, whether it's his career long-term is in danger, like these things, the fact that we let David Luiz drive home last night.
I just found that out about an hour ago.
That's shameful, you guys. I think Arteta should be ashamed of himself for letting him carry on, because at the end of the day, he calls the subs. He's the manager. He could have overridden everything, and he didn't. And I think that shows how desperate we are right now.
He couldn't have forced Luiz to stay in if the doctors didn't want him to stay in. But he certainly could have
subbed him, mate.
He should have. That was actually going to be my question to you, Mike. Is that should Arteta hold most of the responsibility there? Because at the end of the day, he has a duty of care as much as the medical staff do to his players. And David Luiz obviously wasn't right after that. And not even that, something that I think nobody has really talked about is the mental state of David Luiz. He's literally after cracking somebody's skull. He was visibly shaken. He was crying once he had seen Raul Jimenez. Do you expect a person to go out after enduring something like that and just crack on with the game as if it's normal? I thought it was absolutely ludicrous.
Can it be that important to not go down to 2 subs remaining? I mean, the rule should be changed, first of all. Let's just put that aside, though, for a minute, because it's not, to allow a concussion sub. But if that had, and he'll deny it, Mikel Arteta will deny that, but I mean, that's really what the decision was about, was trying to get him through halftime without having to use one of your valuable 3 subs.
Mhm.
The concussion protocol in the Premier League has been changed to remove the decision-making ability from the coach, in the sense that it's meant to remove the ability for the coach to override the medical staff and say, look, the coach and the player want to go on, because the player will always want to go on,
Mhm.
but the medical staff doesn't think he should. Well, he'll stay on. That's been quote unquote taken away from the coach now. But there's a time to trust your medical staff, and then there's a time where after 10 minutes of being treated and the guy's still bleeding, and he at some point in those 10 minutes was not moving. I mean, he couldn't have lost consciousness based on the rules, because if he had, he would have had to have been substituted. So I'm surprised that he didn't lose consciousness, but he had to go down to a knee after being stood up after a few minutes there. I mean, what more sign do you need that the guy needs more evaluation than you can get on the side of the pitch, needs to, is more susceptible to a second injury happening if he's just touched on the side of the head, or even if he heads the ball? And do you want a defender out there that's afraid or shouldn't be heading the ball? I've never been more ashamed of the club. I'm trying to think of other times I've been ashamed of the club, and there's a few, if you social justice things and that sort of thing. But I mean, from a player's livelihood standpoint, I've never been more angry at Arsenal than I was in the 15th minute of that game when they put him back on that pitch. It was just ridiculous.
And it's really disappointing as well, because as I mentioned, growing up, I was involved in all those sort of combat sports and stuff. And the reason I actually quit was I actually watched a few documentaries regarding CTE and the damage it can have in you long term. And as you've mentioned there, Sophie, in recent years, it has come to light the damage that heading the ball alone can do. And I'm not sure what it's like stateside, but I know that over here, nowadays,
women's soccer over here.
But nowadays,
the danger is so much more in women's soccer, because
nowadays here, there, I don't know whether it's been implemented yet, or it's been passed 100%. In youth football under the age of 16, I think it is, you're not allowed to head the ball anymore. And now that's a sort of controversial rule that has come in. But anyway, regardless of whether you agree to it or not, when you see rules like this being implemented and studies coming out about, I'm not sure about the statistics, but footballers nowadays are dramatically more likely to have dementia and Alzheimer's in later life due to the impact of this here. And when you see a club that's renowned for having this touch of class that Arsenal have, to be representing the sport in that way at a time like this when all this stuff is being pushed through is just negligent. You have young kids looking on, and now they think this is what they have to do. They have to play on.
The guy with the bleeding head, whose head looked like the
imagine
a free kick.
His head's bleeding on the outside. What's going on the inside? That's what
the answer is you don't know yet.
And you don't know.
You don't know what's going on.
Should have been evaluated just like a
hockey over here. Ice hockey over here, NFL football over here. They put you in. There's a protocol where they take you off. They put you in a dark room,
the ugly blue tent.
Dark room, not the end line of a football pitch where even without fans there's still lots of lights and noises. I mean, it's meant to compare to your baseline, and none of that stuff could have been done in the 10-minute stoppage. He was lying on the ground motionless for the first 3. So you just can't do that. Yeah. And to take him off at halftime is better than not taking him off at halftime. But it just shows that, he shouldn't have been on there.
Winning. Here's the scoop. That the most disturbing thing about all of that is that it illustrated that trying to get a result is more important than a player's health. That's how it came across to not only Arsenal fans, but fans across the world. Arsenal Football Club had the opportunity to do the right thing, and they didn't. Ever since the movie with Will Smith, Concussion, here in the US, things have changed. If you look at youth sports in the United States, soccer is on the rise hugely with boys and girls. Baseball is back on the rise at grassroots level. And flag football, what's the other word for it? Michael, help me.
It's just it's two-hand touch or non-tackle football.
It's really slowed down because parents are looking at all of these things. And then also as parents, when you look at the rise of MLS, you look at the resurgence of baseball. It's a regional sport, baseball, really, in the United States, but it's still hugely beneficial monetarily if you're a supreme athlete or you're good at the sport because they pay very well. You've got the NBA, which completely requires a different type of skill set. But, soccer, as we call it here, football is on the rise because of these concussion issues with the NFL. And the two have always been compared, football versus soccer, unfortunately, because they're completely different sports. But
the concussion risk is still high, though.
Yeah.
That's the thing about CTE as well that's quite frightening, is that it's non-repairable. Any damage that you're taking is non-repairable. You take time off, it doesn't regenerate. It's a permanent thing. And
as a child, you could have an impact as a child, and it affects you as an adult.
Exactly. We look at even the case that you would be much more familiar, and people would probably know it from the Netflix documentary. But Aaron Hernandez, they attribute a lot of that behavior down to CTE, and a lot of as well they attribute a lot of the domestic abuse that goes on with professional sports athletes down to it, and increased aggression. So when you're talking about the side effects of, he has a concussion, he's going to be out for a while, it isn't that. These are lifelong effects that can continue for years and years and years, and eventually attribute to the early death of some people as well, which is really sad.
And also, in the end, guys, keeping David Luiz on was really not the best decision, not for the team, not for the way we played, not for any of that. And in the end, he was kept on for footballing decisions, which is abhorrent, really, when you think about it.
And he was responsible for one of the goals, I think.
But
not him solely. He shouldn't have been
solely,
on.
But yeah,
look, if we had been down a goal with 20 minutes left and that happened, and we had used all three of our subs, I would have been angry if we kept him on. There are some things.
Play with 10 men, innit? Play with 10 men.
There's some things that are more important than, and that wasn't the case. So it's even more ridiculous that Rob Holding could have easily come into that game at that time, and frankly, it wouldn't have been a huge step down in quality. But that's not even the point.
100%. And again, I'll reiterate this because I've been someone and I'm someone still that backs Mikel Arteta as much as possible. But I think that for me, he's the biggest culprit in this here. But Danny, moving on sort of more back to the game, something else that I think Mikel Arteta sort of has to be held up for is that he has a persistence to play some players more than others. And hindsight's a wonderful thing, because I think the player I'm going to mention was actually one of our better players yesterday. Normally we would cover the lineup in whole, but I think we could all probably agree that due to injuries and suspensions that it was probably what we expected. But maybe one person that we didn't expect to start was Willian. A lot of people thought that Reece Nelson had earned himself a spot within that starting 11 for this game, probably due to Willian's poor performances too. But do you think that it's concerning when you see direct favouritism given to some players within the squad?
Well, you have to question whether it's direct favouritism or whether it's because he's your highest earned player, whether he's the jewel in our crown over Aubameyang. Lacazette, we saw at the beginning of the season, 3 games, 3 goals, and then wasn't started. But Aubameyang couldn't score in a brothel at the moment. And then you think, well, hold on a second. He's Arteta is there's all these holes, and he's trying to fix all these holes. And as soon as he gets another one done, then there's another problem. Then there's something else falling out, and then the whole injury, like you were saying, Owen, for one of those goals, Luiz ran into the edge of our box and stood there, with hands down by his side, and stood there looking at it like that. And as the bloke went around another player and scored. Well, normally he'd have been running towards him, trying to put in a last ditch tackle. He didn't. But all these things are just piling up for Arteta. And then like Willian, he was really good last night. He put in 3 really good crosses, one of which we scored from. Another 2, I don't think Aubameyang, I'm going to be a bit cheeky and say Aubameyang couldn't be bothered to jump. It's not as simple as that. There is something going wrong. There is deep-rooted issues at the club. A side thing, you look at how Mkhitaryan was shit for us. He had one good game. Going to Roma, he's their best player, getting assists and goals and running that game. And it's amazing how he can go and do that. And you are right. There are some players that seem to start every game, and there's not a settled squad. Now, if we had to pick our starting 11 for every game, I think we'd all probably pick the best, that our same starting 11 for every single game. But for some reason, he'll drop this person, he'll move this person around. Whether he's trying to find his feet as a manager and trying to go, well, I know I can rely on you, or it is like it is in the centre midfield with Ceballos and Xhaka. And for me, neither of those two would ever start a game for us. Again, I'd cancel Ceballos' loan and send him back, because he's been he's doing a lot of running, but he is much of a Guendouzi at the moment. He's running around doing nothing. And Xhaka, Xhaka gave up about 6 months ago. Xhaka just cannot. He's not even having shots from the halfway line like we used to try and cheer us up at times. He's not even bothering doing that anymore. And when you see a player jogging back when they should be running back, and you look at it, I was sat forward last night for most of the game, just looking at it. Like when you're at a football game, you don't watch what the TV would show you. You're looking at other players. So I'm trying to do that and looking where people are making their runs. I'm thinking, well, you're walking back. Why are you doing that? It's ridiculous, but. I suppose last night did show a little bit that Willian has got it in him, but it's just how do you get that out of Willian? You can't go from being Chelsea's best player arguably last season to being someone who's had one good game in the first game of the season and half a good game last night. So
it's the infectious. I think it's how infectious that sort of poor attitude and poor work rate, whatever all those sort of compiled things add up to, that can be quite infectious. And it's probably surprising at how fast that can take over a player. And if a player comes in and thinks he's getting an easy ride, he's probably going to do it. So that's probably what I think. But Sophie, Danny mentioned a lot of names there: Aubameyang, Xhaka, Ceballos, and what I find really concerning is, take away Gabriel and Willian out of that there. That's basically our starting 11 last season that we seen last night. These are players that progressed and won an FA Cup. We beat Liverpool in the league. Explain to me, if you can, how a team can regress so suddenly.
This is the $64 million great question, because Super Kevin Campbell and I have been arguing about this a lot over the last couple of weeks. I say debating, discussing. By the way, I just noticed that Super Kev's in the chat. Hello, you legend. You should just send him a link and get him on here to help explain this as well, because he'd probably be up for it.
I try to get him on, and one of these days it'll work.
He's traveling back from Spain. He was just covering the Barcelona game for Facebook and stuff. But
we may be seeing him soon.
This is the question I ask KC. How do you go from galvanizing a depleted, supposedly terribly inherited squad from Wenger, Emery, and handed down, to infusing, even after Project Restart and a global pandemic, a run to win a trophy in your first season? You're in a final with another manager who was a legendary player at his club. Arteta was a good player at our club. He was not a legendary player, but he's being treated as a legendary player now. He's manager. And that's just part of us protecting our own, right? But he went on and he won his first final, and Frank Lampard was not able to achieve that goal. And the difference between and what I say to KC is the difference between Emery and Arteta is only one thing. One of them won their cup final. The other didn't. Because if you look at their record in the Premier League, Emery is superior in goals scored, in goals per game, in all sorts of stats. The only stat where Arteta beats Emery is in goals conceded.
Yeah.
And Arteta handled that really well. But when he's tried to adapt and go back to the back four, it seems like we lose our discipline completely and protection in midfield, which then exposes the back four greatly. So same players, though, who won the FA Cup and were happy when Aubameyang dropped it, and they were laughing and they were celebrating together. So what's happened? I think you've got to look at this, and this is what I've tried to do overnight following our post-game show on the Highbury squad, is he's inherited a broken culture. Emery inherited a broken culture. They both tried to manage it and sustain it as best they could with the tools they had. Unfortunately for Emery, it ended really badly because we got into a terrible rut in the Premier League and we lost a European final against a London rival, right? Arteta comes in, ex-captain, ex-player, really beloved and respected, the right signing at the right time to lift everybody. But he inherited the same problems. It's the same thing when you're in a bad relationship or a bad marriage. You try to fix it, but you know at the core, the same problems are always going to arise. So you're going to have to face them over and over and over again. And when I look back, do I think Arteta's made mistakes? Absolutely. Shouldn't be starting Bellerin, should be starting Maitland-Niles, should not be playing Xhaka and Ceballos together. should be giving Pepe a chance. Of course, he couldn't play. He was suspended. Lacazette shouldn't be the scapegoat. Aubameyang, yes, should be playing down the middle, but at the same time, he scored and almost won the Golden Boot playing from the left side last season.
Mm-hmm.
So there are so many problems. And when you have built an institution and you have a pedigree like Arsenal and you fall greatly, and see this filed under Manchester United, still haven't found their right manager, have not won the Premier League since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. Jose Mourinho comes in, wins the Europa League, wins the League Cup. Everyone thought he was mental when he said that finishing second with this United team was maybe one of the greatest achievements in his career. Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at the scope of Arsenal, the scope of Manchester United, the two teams, apart from Chelsea, that have dominated the Premier League with great sides, great players, legendary players, there's a lot more to this issue than just losing to Wolves, losing to Leicester, losing to Liverpool, losing to the same teams over and over again. The players are responsible, yes, but we can't be proud of Emery going on a 22 unbeaten run and then criticize him and kill him and maul him for not being able to speak English or communicate, and then defend Arteta for having a worse record in the Premier League. I know I just said a lot of stuff there, but I'm trying to encompass how I feel about the situation.
It's a complex situation. The only thing, what I've always attributed it down to is that I think that, and I've said this before, I think that footballers have a base level of performance. And I think that when Mikel Arteta came in, the majority of his squad were playing above their baseline performance, which isn't sustainable. It can't be sustained. And when the majority of your squad are like that, where they're playing above and everybody starts to eventually, the honeymoon period dies out and the sort of raw enthusiasm of a new manager dies out, performances start to dip. But Mike, there's something else, and this could be something that just explodes into a massive talking point. But it's genuine when I say this. When I look back, there's only two things, okay, and the coincide. You've got the dip in performance, and you have the exclusion from Mesut Ozil from the Premier League squad. And I know this is a shit subject, nobody likes talking about it, but we have to talk about it because to me, it almost perfectly coincides. And I'm not talking about opening day against Fulham. We didn't look fantastic against them. But in terms of body language from a lot of our players, the effort that was never questionable when Mikel Arteta first came in. But there's been an obvious change in the camp that they are not putting as much in as they originally were. And to me, it coincides directly with that timeline.
I don't know that it does, though, because, I mean, the last game he played for us was the last game before the shutdown, and he got his first assist of the season in that game against West Ham.
Mm-hmm. And we were at that game.
I know. I was going to say that, but I say that all the time, and people think that I'm just,
bragging,
being a jackass. But no,
but it's the actual exclusion where he wasn't even registered. That's a sort of kick in the face to any player, let alone somebody with the profile of Mesut Ozil's.
I agree, but he was available and not being selected constantly in May, June, July, August when we did kind of. After that initial stumble against a couple of stumbles against City and Villa, we started beating Big Four teams and winning the cup. I mean, I don't know that.
But put it like this here. Put it like this.
To be the end of next June, so that it's just no longer in anyone's hands anymore. Because if we want to argue all day about who's to blame and what the reason is, you could do a whole series of podcasts over that and still not get to the final answer and still not agree on it. The fact that it is hanging over our club's head it's a problem and it needs to just go away.
Yeah, it does. How can I put this politely? Sorry to interrupt you guys, but how can I put this politely? We're in the middle of scratch your head, Danny, because there is no answer to this, babe. There is no answer. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Everyone's looking for a cure, right? Arsenal are in their own pandemic in some way. And we have a disease that we don't really have a cure for yet. And Ozil is not the cure either. Mesut Ozil is not. And I have it on good authority from someone who was very close to Unai Emery. This started when Unai was manager.
Kevin Campbell.
He is no, it's not Kevin. It's not Kevin at all. And Kevin will vouch for me. But he caused problems, and the reason why Emery started benching him was because he was lazy. He was told when in the Wenger days he could train whenever he wanted. You guys, and Emery's trying to build a team, and
that's what I've always viewed it as being is that he. Aside from his performance on the pitch, it was more about the off the pitch, the brand, the passive aggressiveness. Now, look, I don't shame him. In fact, I rather completely back and understand him with his comments about social justice, and I think he got done really, really, really dirty there. But there's so much more than just that. And it started so much more before just that. Are we forgetting all the back injuries and that may or may not have been back injuries? There's just always been something that just isn't full dedication to the team. And
but the only thing I would put to there, and when I'm saying that it coincides with the timeline of him being excluded, is that apparently, regardless of his work rate and training or anything, apparently Mesut Ozil is quite a popular figure within the dressing room. Okay, and Mikel Arteta came in. Mikel Arteta
that's part of his gamesmanship, and I don't want that kind of gamesmanship going on at my club.
Mikel Arteta came in like the sort of union man. I'm a man of the people. I was an ex-player. I'm with yous. And my only concern is that. And Danny, you have a lot of wisdom. Maybe you could answer this one. Is that when the players see the manager sort of being the boardroom's whipping boy and excluding a player for non-footballing reasons, that surely could have a knock-on effect through the dressing room. Whereas maybe the dressing room sort of feels betrayed, as if he's taken their side over the squad side.
Can I add an asterisk to your question to Danny?
Yeah.
Under Unai Emery, it was footballing reasons. Let's please not put this whole China thing into
that hadn't happened.
I'm not sure about China, but I think there's something else. I think there's something else.
Well, I think you've got a food chain of the club, there players-wise, and Ozil is the top of that food chain. Aubameyang is second in that food chain. You can't go and exclude the bloke at the top of the food chain and expect the rest of the food chain to go, oh, certainly, sir, no problem, sir. He's apart from Bellerin, he's played the most number of games there. He's been one of the most influential players at the club for ages. He's one of the most famous players in the world, be it for Germany, be it Real Madrid, or be it because of his religion. So many people support our club because of those three reasons. I'm a Germany fan. I'd rather see Germany win stuff than England at the moment with the atrociousness going on there.
Me too.
Dude, God, did he just say that out loud?
I don't care about England, not while they got those morons in charge.
You
but
said that a lot of many times.
While they have Tottenham players playing.
What happens if I try and share something like that? Can you see that? Oh, you can.
Oh.
Hold on. I need to make it a little bit bigger.
I had to physically allow you to do that.
There you go.
That looks like a transfer market.
Arteta took over just before the Bournemouth game. That run of 10 games there, so his first 10 games as Arsenal manager, Arteta played Ozil. We scored 16 goals in them 10 games. We lost one game, which was that Chelsea one, which we should have won. And in that run of 10 games, we were magnificent. And plus we were in the FA Cup and we were kicking ass. And what did Mesut do? Most of the games he played the full 90 minutes, 1 goal, 1 assist. That's all Mesut did in there. So I think you have to look at that and go, well, hold on a sec. Like you were saying, Mike, towards the end of last season, Ceballos came into his own and he was playing well, setting stuff up and playing really well. And then you're thinking, oh, we can't afford to have. Remember that old saying, you can't afford to have a flair player if you want to play as a team and get stuff done. And Ozil was the flair player who was doing nothing. That is not the signs of a player that you should go, oh, certainly, sir. You've not played a game since the 7th of July. And we want to bring you back in. Cheers, I was looking for that button. We want to bring you back in when you can re-register you in January. Yeah, don't worry the fact that you've not played a game for 5 months. Yeah, just come straight back in. You'll slip back in. You'll do brilliant.
Because you possess a quality and have shown in the past that you possess this quality, the more you don't play, the more you post passive-aggressive videos and live tweet games, all you're doing is you're appealing to the resistance. You're not doing anything that helps Arsenal. And that just
It's not going to work. So you take that into consideration, and you take into consideration the status that he has at the club. You're going to have to try and remove all that lot. And we will see in this summer, Ozil's going, Kolasinac will go, Mustafi will go, Papi, God rest his soul, will go.
There's the click.
Exactly, Soph. Yeah,
Clicks
all of
are
that lot.
dangerous within a football team.
And
Listen,
then,
sorry, go on, Danny. Go on, mate.
I was going to say, then we'll see. He'll be freeing up best part of £1 million a week in wages. Some of the clique will have gone, the German clique, which there was quite a few of them there. And because although Papi is Greek, he's the German clique because he spent most of his career, apart from a short time in Milan, in Germany. And once they're all gone, then Arteta can go, right, now I'm going to bring in my own players. He's brought in, I think, 6 players, 2 free transfers, 1 on loan, 1 that cost £1 million as a goalkeeper, and then Partey and Gabriel. That's it. That's not his squad, is it? I mean, look, we always say, look how long Klopp took. I mean, Liverpool, best team in the world, got smashed 7-2 by Villa. I don't see their fans trying to burn the stadium down.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. The issue with some of this stuff and what's going on in terms of how fans see it too is that there is one of the biggest problems of our club is the DNA and the culture. Arsene Wenger, George Graham built it. Arsene Wenger took over from Bruce Rioch and evolved it and elevated it and changed the game in England, period. Sir Alex Ferguson will tell you that. And with that same token, sometimes, and we see it in TV shows all the time, you burn the house that you built, right? And the truth is that Wenger built something and he also destroyed it.
Built flats on it.
I don't care what anyone says. I love the guy. I love what he did for the club. But he and Gazidis and other executives. And when you talk about DNA and culture, guys, I want you to think about things that are really important in a club. Look what's happened to Manchester United. Everyone complains about that. Their fans complain about the Glazers, right? You look at Chelsea, you can argue about what Abramovich has done with his revolving managerial door, but he has yielded results. Being ruthless, firing Ancelotti in the stairwell at Goodison Park after winning the double, okay? But yet he's yielded results. We became a club that a little bit like, and I'm not comparing the two, and Mike, maybe you can help me explain this a little. Joe Paterno ruled Penn State for so long. He became this figurehead, this name. You couldn't touch him. No one even associated with him could touch him. And I think that's what happens with Sir Alex Ferguson, with Wenger. They become these names, these enigmatic gurus, right?
Yes, well, you become bigger than the club itself.
You become bigger than the club.
Penn State was a college, uni, whatever you want to call it, American football. Well, they still are, but Joe Paterno coached them for literally 60 years until he had to retire in disgrace for a sexual abuse.
Let so many things just ride under the table, right?
But it's just that the whole. I mean, I love what you said about Arsene Wenger building it up and then tearing it down as he went on the way out, because there's no question that he talked about, I want to leave was it him that said, I want to leave the club in better shape than I found it, he just absolutely didn't listen to himself there, and he wouldn't leave. His stubbornness did not allow him to pass it off at a point where new ideas were needed, where players were still at the top of their game, where we might have still had players with value.
I mean, David Dean too, leaving. I mean, that's, when you have these figureheads in a business, in a corporation, whether you're Coca-Cola or Procter & Gamble or you're Penn State or the New England Patriots, Liverpool, Arsenal, you lose someone like David Dean, who worked and managed the club in such a way, was such a great, charismatic negotiator, and also loved the club. These are difficult holes to fill. You see lots of companies and lots of different organizations suffer from losing figureheads like that for a number of time. Apple has not been the same since Steve Jobs passed away. It just hasn't had the same customer service, hasn't had the same ingenuity or innovation. It just hasn't. And
Look at the
so
sway that David Dean gave us with the FA. He was on all the committees and all the boards. Who do we have
amazing.
now? No one. We have Gunnosaurus if we're lucky on the
Exactly,
FA
But
board.
do you think as well? I was just thinking this today.
You think a lot of things.
Well, I'm very surprised at that. Well done, Mike. I'll get you a little badge or a star. Well, gonna get you a little star board every time you do good.
For a guy of your lovely age, you have a lot of thoughts. So and this is the place to get them out.
Yeah. First pube grew today, so it did. So it's a good day around my household.
Right,
anyway,
on the same day
I was just thinking today.
Of you with your child.
Yeah, I move quick. No, but I was just thinking today that given the Rona, cover your mouth, man. Jesus Christ, wear a mask. I was thinking today that given the current situation, do you think that it was too much of a leap of faith to take in so many inexperienced people and put them in the positions they're in? Maybe obviously there's been a knock-on effect obviously due to sackings or people leaving the club, but with Edu, Vinay and Mikel Arteta, that's a real lack of experience to be managing a club in the turmoil that we're facing, Sophie, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've been in positions where Fortune 500 companies have hired inexperienced people, but yet you could say inexperienced people change our world. Mm-hmm. The guys who create Uber, Google, Facebook, none of these guys had experience. They just came up with great ideas. They were game changers, right? I mean, yeah, okay, Mark Zuckerberg maybe stole it from the dudes from Harvard, but you know what I'm talking about.
Allegedly.
So I think Edu came to the club with a sense of, there was an expectation with what he could bring to the table with talent from his South American connections. We did that previously with Arsene Wenger and his connections in France. This is why players like Saliba and Thierry Henry and all these players wanted to play for Arsenal, because of Arsene Wenger, because of the legacy that he had built. So, yes, I agree with you in the sense that there's inexperience, but at the same time with inexperience comes balls. Mm-hmm. And big time decision making and not fearing what you're doing because you've been given the autonomy to go ahead and try and create change.
But that's a KSE strategy, though, and they've done it with virtually every single one of their clubs. And Josh in the chat.
It's working for the LA Rams.
Well, it
hasn't for the Colorado Rapids. It hasn't for the Denver Nuggets.
It's working for the Nuggets. It's really working for the Avalanche, not necessarily on a championship level, but getting closer and closer. But my point is, that's where that comes from, though. I mean, it's clear, and it was clear when we talked to him the summer of 2019 that they envisioned the same kind of get young, influential guys who can be the first Mikel Arteta rather than the next Arsene Wenger. Mm-hmm. And you take a lot of risk when you do that, because if you pick the wrong people, you've just set that clock back another 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And that's
but we've already set the clock back with the guys that, look, we all know that Wenger and Gazidis were in this way too long. Look what Gazidis has done at AC Milan right now. Mm-hmm. It's fresh, it's new. They were in the job too long. You guys have seen it with bosses you've worked for. You've seen it with career people you work with. They were left in the job too long because it was comfortable. And this is what I said to Casey and Amanda on the show. Did some of those FA Cups create a Band-Aid? And they set us up for failure in the Premier League because we thought, wow, 2014, 15, 17, 20. We win 4 FA Cups in 6 years. We are ready to launch the rocket in the Premier League. But being a cup team and in a one-off game mentality versus over 36, is it 36 or 38 games? I can't remember.
38.
Thank you. 38 games in the Premier League is very different. To sustain that week after week after week. And so this is why I give him the benefit of the doubt, is that he hasn't created the team in his image. Every great manager creates a team in their image. Klopp, Conte, Pep. We've seen it with great managers over the years that team literally takes on the characteristic and the personality of their manager. Arteta hasn't been able to do that yet, but this is where I kind of pause in that. Wow, look at Unai Emery's record in the Premier League versus his.
But the difference I see there was that he was getting further and further away from his players having any clue what he was all about, it seemed. Whereas with Mikel Arteta, up until the last couple of weeks, I could not have been more confident that the players would have, this is going to sound ridiculous after what we've seen in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but, leading towards the end of last season, at the restart, FA Cup, Charity Shield, look, I thought he had those players ready to jump through a wall for him.
For fire. Yeah,
absolutely. But the problem is
he wasn't going to lose them, and it just seems as though
something's happened. Do you feel like something's wrong?
Willian jets off to Dubai. There's a scrape in the and more importantly a leak about the fisticuffs, the handbags, which I know is not appropriate to say.
Pepe goes public about how he's upset not being picked.
But you think about even everything there you're talking about. There's such a collection of stuff there. Even think about the fact that we have Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, one of the best strikers in Europe over the last decades, playing on the left wing. Obviously, he probably won't be happy. People are content to do that for a small temporary period, to plug the hole. But for a sustained length of time at the age he is, I don't think it would sit too well with him. Alexander Lacazette being taken out of the side for Eddie Nketiah, Nicola Pepe not getting a run of games, Mesut Ozil being excluded. And we're talking all of those people are big characters within our dressing room. And that sort of, I know myself from even amateur football teams, people start to whisper, people start to talk, and eventually all them whispers add up and there's an atmosphere around the club. But Danny, going back to sort of the matches here, as I mentioned, I would agree with you there, Sophie, just to touch on that as well. I actually mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I think that the FA Cup victory could have been a curse in disguise, that I think that it raised it raised the expectation levels for Mikel Arteta too high for this season. But Danny, going back, as I've mentioned, I back Arteta. I try to make sense over a lot of the decisions that he's making. But when we talked there a lot about sort of building a culture at the club and the DNA of the club, something that really makes me question some of the decisions that he's making is like the exclusion of Ainsley Maitland-Niles, the exclusion of Balogun and Emile Smith-Rowe. We've seen Balogun come on in the Europa League midweek and score from an Emile Smith-Rowe assist. And then you would say Nelson missing out in that spot over Pepe. To me, Mikel Arteta hasn't put in place a culture that if you do well, you get rewarded for it. And surely a player like Balogun now, who is negotiating a contract, the club are trying to get him to stay. Surely that's sort of having a bad knock-on effect on a player like him, innit?
It does make you wonder that what you have to do to be dropped. Lacazette, I don't really think Lacazette did anything wrong. He was scoring the goals. He was doing all right. He was trying to do the Giroud without being the Giroud kind of player, and that was really hard. But he still managed to carry on doing it. He's still scoring goals. Meanwhile, Aubameyang isn't playing, and the curse of the new deal has ruined him. Balogun, Smith-Rowe has been doing wonders for the youths. The Saliba thing, I think we'll see Saliba in the second half of the season because he's been playing quite well for the under-23s, and Chambers came back playing for those as well. But with Smith-Rowe, is a player I really like. He has a touch of the Jack Wilshere's about him for me. He's a homegrown player. He's got a great centre of balance. He's quick. He's got an eye for goal. He's got a great pass in him. And he's I don't know what the problem is. It's like there's been a few younger players at the club that haven't been playing a lot in the last season or so because, like the goalkeeper, I don't know what the problem was. On Kong Arthur, I think his name was. He's 19 playing for the under-23s. He's another young player who's going to be coming up soon. And as Arsenal fans, we want to see all these young players coming through. But Willock last season played more games, whether they be 5-minute games or 1-minute games, than any other player at the club. And for me, Willock hasn't improved on from the League Cup, maybe Europa League type players that he is. And this comes back to something I've been saying for years. Our loan manager needs firing. We have got an entire generation of Arsenal players coming through that have not had championship team loans, which is what they need. Before we spent and went to Birmingham, we had the Cock go to Charlton. We had all these young... You look at we've got about 18
you used
players.
You used to do the loan review at the beginning of ABW, and I would listen to that, and that's where I learned about Nketiah. That's where, it was like a 45-minute segment because we had so many guys. It wasn't like Chelsea levels of loan players, but these guys went and got experience and then came back. Look, they didn't always make it. Some were sold, but
Yeah, I mean, maybe I might do that again. But
I think
you've
it's
got
a
all
great
these
point.
players that have missed out on going out and playing competitive football. Now, we've seen Reece Nelson go out, and he went out and he did it with Hoffenheim. And Josh in the chat watches a lot of that and said he had a good first bit to the season, then he was rubbish. But Willock needs a loan. These players need to go to lower Premier League teams or higher Championship teams, and they don't. You go and look at them all. They're all at League One, League Two sides. At one point a few years ago, we were loaning players out to Dutch second division sides, MVV, VV, VVV, or whatever they were called. Absolutely pointless. So these, like Arteta, these
Crowley,
kids are,
I think, went.
Super Dan Crowley.
He looked the what is it? He looked the I don't know. I'm trying to think of the bell expression, but
why isn't Balogun gone on loan? Like he would, to me, he's someone that can really.
He did last season.
But
didn't
see,
he?
I'll say this here, because this is something that
I
I've been preaching for a while, and I may put myself in the firing line here, but I'll be completely honest. Unless there's something dramatic changes, I really don't see Reece Nelson, Joe Willock, or Eddie Nketiah having a future at this club. I think that when you look at the amount of games that they have played now at the senior level, and you compare them to players at other teams of a similar age and profile, I don't think that they do well matching up against them. I don't see enough.
Let me ask you guys this: Willock, those three players you just mentioned, which team do they start? Forget City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, Man United, whatever. Do those players start for Newcastle, Aston Villa, Burnley, Everton?
No.
Tell me.
I think I always say Joe Willock, I think his career peak, and this might sound bad, I think you're looking at a Crystal Palace level. I think that's going to be his career level. And that's probably
what Casey argues with me about. He's like, Soph, those young players, they're just not good enough, so he can't trust them, which is why he doesn't play them.
And how bad would it be to start moving people through give Willock a chance and see if he can find the level. Give Smith Rowe a chance. Hopefully he can be the answer. And if they're just not, if they're good but not good enough, you sell those guys, and you do this thing called making money off of those guys, and you then put the next guy through. If Eddie Nketiah isn't good enough for Arsenal, and I know that I'm somewhere in the world, Tom Canton is laughing at that, but if he's not good enough for Arsenal, he might not be a guy that's going to play every game in, game out. Then his value is probably never going to be higher than it is now, and Balogun deserves a chance.
Mike, would he? By the way, Josh, back me up. Balogun has not been out on loan. Thank you. And also, Matthew asks a really good question. Why did we refuse 20 million for Maitland-Niles if we're not going to play him?
I don't understand that.
To side with Ozil on his social issues. Is that the kind of club that we've become now, where we can't separate belief from talent and what you can offer on the pitch? I mean,
I did not want to sell him, not for 20, not for 25.
But he's not playing him. Why isn't he playing him?
That I don't understand. That's one of my, why is Willian playing and why is Mainsley not playing?
But surely if he was displaying attitude issues, or he was saying like
but they had reconciled that apparently.
But what I suspected was that apparently two of the players that refused to take the pay cut alongside Mesut Ozil were younger players, and I've heard rumors about the other, but it could possibly be Ainsley Maitland-Niles. That's the thing there as well.
This is where
why not sell him in January?
Yeah, I often argue with KC about team selection and stuff like that, but he brings up a good point, and this is what a lot of season ticket holders of my generation say, Generation X, and fans like Danny, especially. When you see some of the younger players that come up, if they're not good enough, and the manager sees them week in, week out, day in, day out training, then you can trust them in a Europa League game against Mold or Dunkirk, or was it
Dundalk?
Thank you.
Dunkirk's where they had that battle in it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But can you trust them against Wolves, Villa?
Send them to Hastings.
Everton? That's the problem, is knowing and trusting them in those kinds of games. And if we're going to evolve as a club, at some point you say, okay, I'll throw them out there. Well, Willock played. Did he really have an impact against Wolves? No. But also against Aston, I thought that at the same time, there were moments where he was begging Willian to... What was the game we played before Wolves that we lost? Was it against Aston Villa?
No, we drew against Leeds.
The Leeds game, he was almost begging Willian to make runs, to go forward.
Yeah.
He was shouting at him. And so I feel like he was a little bit set up to fail. So I'm going to give Willock the benefit of the doubt. Maitland-Niles, to me, is a player that I would start every day of the week ahead of Bellerin. Period.
Yeah, it's his mentality. Look, he's
much more industrious.
He's and when he does lose the ball, he will work harder than anybody else on that pitch to get it back. Mm-hmm. And even when he hasn't, other than maybe El Neni.
He breaks into the England team and loses it and doesn't play for Arsenal. Yeah. But look at these players. Talk about experience. Look at Jack Grealish. Played against us in the 4-0 FA Cup final. Didn't really do much all that season for them. The thing that made him was a couple of seasons in the Championship. Well, when you're a boxer, you don't go straight in and fight Mike Tyson, do you? You get easy fights and you work your way up. These players are coming straight into Premier League games or Europa League games going, go on, there's the pressure. In the old days, 10 years ago, the loan system was really good. We'd get loaned out to mid-table La Liga teams, maybe the odd Farmers League team. You forget that I was looking that we've had about 5 players that went on loan to Italy. We had Sendros went on loan to AC Milan. Armand Traore went on loan to Juventus. I don't know what they did. Bentner went to Juventus. And all these players, now they're going to, no disrespect to the lower league teams, I'm a fan of lower league football, but these players need to have a little bit of, I'm the bigger one here, I'm the better player, to get a bit of confidence up and then go, now I know what to do against slightly easier opposition. And then you can translate that into playing against the other teams. But they're all coming in and
it's the nail on the head again. It feels like these younger players at Arsenal think they've arrived before they have.
Exactly what I was going to say.
That's the enabling culture that we have created. Mm-hmm. So managers like Emery and Arteta now have to deal with that. And how do they deal with that?
Yeah, no, that's it. Exactly. I always felt with them three in particular, there was an arrogance there. And I always use the reference to what Stevie Gerrard said before. And it was that nowadays players make their first competitive appearance for their team and they think they've made it, whereas that's where the work's only really starting. That's where you have to. But I know we're maybe running on in time with 2 more subjects to cover. But
can we quickly, Soph, I know this could be a 20-minute answer.
But it could be 10 seconds. It's a...
Wait, sorry, I tell you what, make it a 10 Russ, and we'll let Sophie answer.
No, right. Russ needs to save his money for the beers at the 12 Pins when it reopens again.
30 seconds. I don't think we can keep blaming the Cronkies. They've put money behind this team. Look at what we've spent in the last 2 years. It's not like they haven't invested. Granted, we haven't invested like United and Chelsea and Liverpool, but we've spent money. When Arsenal Football Club spends 72 million on a player like Pepe, that's serious money. Okay, you guys. Can't keep blaming the owners. Now, previously, do we blame the owners or do we blame Wenger and Gazidis managing the project like they did? That's 6 one, half a dozen in the other. Are we ever going to know the real answer to that question? I think it's a little bit of both.
It's the easy thing to just go back to, though, when you don't.
You can't keep blaming the owners.
It'll always be there. And look, every morning, every evening, Hoggy, I love you. But
when we were on the 22 unbeaten game run with Emery, was anyone blaming the owners? No, we were all riding the wave. Our team was winning, even though we were winning poorly against some dodgy teams. But we went on a 22 unbeaten game run in the Premier League with Unai Emery, you guys. Think about that. It's not easy to go 2 games and win. 3. To go 22 unbeaten, whether you win, lose, or draw, it's not easy. And he did it. And somehow he did it with the same fucked up players that everyone's complaining about now.
Yeah.
So explain that to me.
Amrian.
It's Cronky.
Amrian. Dundalk won 11-0 yesterday.
They must have been playing against Dunkirk.
To be fair,
Dunkirk derby.
To be fair, Sophie, Dundalk's about 15 minutes away from me, and it's
sorry about that.
No, it's a bit of a fucking war zone too, so you can be forgiven. I'd rather go to Dunkirk. But anyway, yeah. No, one thing I want to sort of touch on before the end of the show is Aubameyang. He's someone I think that has escaped criticism maybe in recent weeks, but last night he can't. You know, when you pull that armband on for a club like Arsenal, there's expectations on your shoulders, not just in the way that you play, but in the way that you present yourself. And I was absolutely disgusted to see a player of his age and a player with his reputation to be throwing his arms about throughout the entirety of that match. I mean, there was balls put in by Reece Nelson that he didn't even make an effort to get on the end of. Danny, what, you know, when you look back at captains like Vieira, Adams, you know, name any of them, and you see a captain act like that when a team's going through a rough patch, how does that make you feel?
I think someone famous once said it doesn't matter who has the armband, it should be 11 captains on the field. I think at times last night we had none. Xhaka, ex-captain, should be doing a lot more shouting. He's just going through the numbers, it seems, at the time. I look back at, for me, the peak captains were Adams and Vieira, but David O'Leary is a great captain. Kenny Sampson was a great captain. I think maybe Pat Rice and Frank McClintock and all those ones going back there, where you had, as a captain, your role wasn't just on the field. I think you had interactions with the manager and more of a say in what goes on the field. I think it doesn't. You might as well just have no captains anymore. I think that having a captain's armband is a thing of the last century, unless it's going to be, the rule should be that nobody speaks to the referee at all. You open your mouth or anything, or you give it any of that, straight off. Fuck off. Don't do anything. What have I done? What have I done? Fuck off. No, you red, yellow card, speak to me again, you little prick, and you're off. Only the captains in that case should be approach the manager. And if any of those other players do it...
Danny going in hard against Lacazette right there.
Oh, yeah. But Aubameyang is... Drew, who we all know and love, was said that Aubameyang isn't captain material. And there's so much that has gone on with the club at the moment. We're going to look back at this in years to come and go, oh, now we all thought that Aubameyang would be running like a whippet at the age of 50.
He's a great captain when things are going well.
No, but we do this. As a club, we do this so often. We did it with Thierry Henry. We did it with Robin van Persie. We did it with Cesc Fabregas. And now we've done it with Aubameyang. A player, we're in a bad situation and it looks like there could be a possible risk of us losing the player and we throw the captain's armband. I'm sorry, but you don't throw the captain's armband at somebody who isn't 100% completely dedicated to be here in the first place. You know what I mean?
It was known that he was looking around other clubs, and I think other clubs looked at it and he thought, well, I think he was on 180. I think he probably, in his agent, probably thought we can get 250, possibly 300 grand a week. Let's go and have a look at all the rest of the clubs in Europe and see what they want. The big clubs like Barcelona couldn't afford him. Real Madrid didn't need him. All the other big clubs cannot afford anywhere near the amount of money that Premier League players are getting paid, unless you're the big 2 or 3 in Europe. And they probably come back and went, no, Alba, just sign the deal. Now, I've got nothing against Aubameyang. He's done magnificent for the club. He's a lovely man, a lovely player, even though he does spray paint his hair on, which you could see on a couple of the close-ups last night. You went, hold on, sir. If this rains, sunshine, you're going to go full Giuliani here if it rains.
Another thing you have in common with footballers, Danny.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't really think it's his problem, but I think when things are not really working, Aubameyang isn't the one you can rely on to be a captain. He's the one we rely on for goals, and at the moment we can't rely on him for anything. And I'm not pointing the finger at him. He has done more than enough to get a whole season's worth of leeway, but why do we give them everything? We give them the keys to the castle to stay, and it turns out he might be a bit of a dirty rascal.
Yeah, no,
Xhaka's a better captain than Aubameyang. I'm not saying he's a better player, but Mike will confess, having seen and met him in LA, you could see why they gave him the armband compared to everyone else.
I'll let him do whatever he wants, because as long as he doesn't kick my ass.
Yeah, he was going to kill you.
He was going to absolutely kill me.
No, I actually think, to be honest with you, if I look at that,
my life, so.
If I look at that team now, it's Kieran Tierney and Gabriel that both stand out to me. As
Gabriel, how many? He saved us so many times, hasn't he?
Imagine we did.
I mean, is he going to come down to earth? Has he just been? So many players have come in for us, and I know Gabriel's of a different class than Rob Holding or Chambers or anyone else you want to mention, but. What happens when his level drops a little bit?
But I don't know if it will.
Playing at such a high level.
I don't know if it will, because that's the position that's the position that I've played, and everything just looks natural to him. There's no fat on his movements, if you will. he just looks so comfortable. I just think it's a case that this is the
plays the game, doesn't he?
This is the perfect league for him, I think.
Yeah.
But one last question, and everybody can sort of chime in on this one, but I'll throw it to you first, Sophie, because I know we're sort of running low on time here. It's a bit of a double barrel one. And it's
probably my fault for talking too much. Go on.
No, you're all good. No rush. The question is that how much pressure is there now on Mikel Arteta going into the Spurs game? And my second sort of question is one of a similar thing: is how long do we give Mikel Arteta realistically?
This is a superb question, because I feel like if I answer it in a certain way, I'll be vilified, and if I answer it the way I want, I'll be able to put my head on the pillow at night and be comfortable with how I will. So I'm going to do it my way, right? If we lose in a horrible manner to Spurs, no Arsenal manager should survive that. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you've done. I don't care who. I don't care. You can't lose. If we lose to Spurs the way Man United did, he can't survive that. Okay. Mm-hmm. If we put in a good performance and we draw, or we lose when people are expecting us to, I'm okay with that. But you cannot show up in the North London derby against this lot who are top of the league right now, which makes everything so much worse. Now, whether or not that lasts, we'll see. But this is Mourinho. He has a tendency to do crazy things in his managerial career, and they concern me this season. But they're the least of my worries right now.
Yeah.
So I think if we lose horribly to Spurs,
you're talking a 5-1 type of situation.
If we lose 5-1, he's got to go. That's not melodramatic. That's an instant gratification. Well, listen, you guys who's listening, it is not me being Sophie, the Arsenal fan. It's me being Sophie, the chief executive, who says in the world that we live in of instant gratification, you cannot lose to Spurs 5-1. You cannot.
Well, and I don't think the people that would be in charge of making that decision to sack him share that same view, and that's part of the problem is that they don't share that same view. They, and I just don't, and I've been proven wrong about just about everything I've said, because as we all know, 5 seasons in, I don't know fucking anything. But I am the first person, the second, and the third person to admit to that. But I don't see us losing 5-1. I think that's the one thing that we have kind of gotten out of our system is these. Although this comes after losing 3-0 to Aston Villa at home, I just think that we took Aston Villa for granted, and we won't with Spurs.
Mike, the writing was on the wall from the West Ham game. This is when this started. Look back at that game. Go watch that game. Go back and watch that West Ham game. Danny?
I'd rather not, actually.
That game.
I may be in bed a lot over the next few days, so maybe I'll go back and watch it. But
we were lucky we won that game.
100%. They had a penalty shot that I think
we weren't great against Fulham either, were we?
Yeah, I think he's tightened up the big game attitude going on away from home.
How has he when we're 15th in the league? Stop saying that. Everyone stop. It's madness. How can you say that when you look at our league position?
I'm only saying that the 6-0s and the 6-3s and the 5-1s, I think, have abated a little bit. That is not a sign of massive success. I understand that. I'm just saying that I think our bigger problem are games against Wolves and Fulham than they are games.
Worse to me. I think for me, the loss to Aston Villa was more humiliating
it was dreadful.
To that Man United team at Old Trafford at the time 8-2, because that Man United team was sensationally phenomenal. Double whatever there. But
I don't know, dropping 8 to anybody
dropping 8 to them and dropping 5 or 7 to Bayern Munich. Okay, fine, but
5 or 7. What is this?
Dropping 3 to Villa at home after they barely scraped surviving in the Premier League last season. The most humiliating result in years for me as an Arsenal fan.
That was
the manner of that performance as well. That was disappointing. Danny, you're quite a patient man. What do you reckon?
Well, it's I wouldn't sack him under any circumstances. Gets the rest of the season, definitely. We'll see against Spurs, we will see that Holding will be my partnering Gabriel at the back. We'll have Tierney and Bellerin and Leno. And that's a decent defensive unit. That's what's got us most of our clean sheets this season. Hopefully, Elneny will be back. He'll cover the back four. He'll do his job. He has no ambition other than to do his job properly, and that's what we need from a team. Is Partey injured or is he COVIDed?
No,
or
he's out for 2 months apparently.
His injury, of course, is it went from being a one-game thing to being, he's out for the next 2 years.
He's such a big mess.
I think we have shown that we play our best, sadly, when we play defensive. We've seen that against Man United, which I think is possibly one of the only decent results we've had, games we've had this season, where we are actually so good. I downloaded the game and I watched it again. It wasn't the greatest to watch, but you don't have to be the greatest to watch to be the best, and that's what we can do, because Aubameyang isn't doing it, Lacazette isn't doing it, Eddie is never going to do it at this level. I don't think. The more I see of Eddie, the more I think, no, you just don't have it in you. Pepe won't be playing, so we won't have him bringing the side down. Bless him, it's not his fault, but I think we're going to have to pack the midfield, maybe see three, Elneny, Xhaka, Ceballos in midfield, and we're just going to go for the draw, because I think Arteta...
Ceballos and Xhaka in midfield together, please, save me.
Arteta has been in enough North London derbies and been playing in English football for long enough to know what this means. Emery maybe didn't get it, but Arteta did get it, and Arteta was manager last season when we lost 2-1 there. I think we scored early on with, was it Lacazette? And then they got another one quickly, and then someone scored near the end of the game, and they won 2-1. But knowing our luck, Gareth Bale's going to come on, have the game of his life, and we're going to lose 4-1 or 4-0, 4-1, 4-0. It's not going to
be Emery did get it. He gave us our favourite NLD in years.
Absolutely. That is absolutely
and let me tell you, maybe Arteta gave up too quickly and easily on Torreira. Didn't want to coach him, did he?
That's a good shout.
Did not want to coach him. How about Torreira with Partey? He gave up. This is the thing with Arteta, you guys. This is the stuff. It's a bit too mixed. You give up on some and you're ready to give the others a shot. Whereas you had a ready-made player in Torreira. Something went wrong. But why couldn't you coach him? What was wrong? I mean, if he didn't want to live in England, fine. I get that. Mm-hmm. But Emery gave us the best NLD memory of our recent time.
It's a man management thing. That's one of my concerns with Arteta. But look, I have said a few times this podcast, I have backed him and will continue to back him 100% because from what I've seen from him in the back end of last season, his first sort of stint, I was impressed, and I think a big part of the problem is that he just doesn't have the players to implement the system that he wants to put in. And I think a part of the problem is that he has been present at Man City, where it's, if you need something, you get it.
Throw money at it.
Throw money at it. But here, right, so for me, Spurs is a massive fixture, but I'm concerned about this here. So I'm just going to go through the league fixtures here. Spurs this weekend, we've got Burnley on the 13th, Southampton on the 16th. I would be concerned about that game. Everton on the 19th, concerned about that. Man City on the 22nd, and Chelsea on Boxing Day.
Jesus
Happy Christmas, everyone.
Do you want to know what? I don't want it to happen.
That is a really tough Hanukkah run right there.
I don't want this to happen.
He ruined the holiday season, didn't he? Just ruined it.
I don't want this to happen. If it was ever to make a negative prediction about when a man could lose his job, which is a bad thing to do, but that Boxing Day fixture is the one that concerns me. If we don't get a run of results, that could be the final nail in the coffin for me.
But who's available to bring in? There's no one out there, is there?
See, this is why I don't want it to happen. There's Mauricio Pochettino, there's Max Allegri. Is still out of a job.
He's not going to come to a mid-table Europa League team, is he?
I'm just joking.
No, it would have to be one of those, and this is why I don't think in the middle of the season it's any. I mean, you get a caretaker to the end of the season, then you go after one of those young German whippersnappers, doing bits at Leipzig or one of those other places.
Nagelsmann.
But one of Drew's you put Drew Thompson in charge of picking our next coach, and then we'll be okay.
Get a good one.
Emery got 18 months. They're not going to fire Arteta now.
No,
and even
it
though
would
I may
embarrass
think
them.
that an embarrassing result against Spurs deserves a firing, because it all depends how the players perform, you guys, and what we see from them. Are they playing for him?
Are they playing for him? It's not even so much about how they perform. It's whether they're playing for him. To me, that's where Emery lost me. It wasn't because we were playing poorly. It was because there was just no. I mean, the Xhaka incident. There were so many other things that happened. It was just clear that he had lost the dressing room, and that's what worries me about some of these kind of cascading things off the pitch that are happening. But I'm not ready to say he's lost the dressing room yet. If it becomes blatantly clear that they are just like doing what Chelsea did against Mourinho a few years back, then
I think it's like Spurs. It's a Pochettino project, right? You could have argued that Pochettino, everyone keeps going on about him. He never won nothing. He got them to a Champions League final. Great. Okay, that was amazing. He elevated Spurs. He made lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
He got them playing and being competitive in the Premier League again and consistently finishing top 4. You could argue that Harry Redknapp started that trend, though, right? So he never got fired because they believed in this project. Now, it never came to fruition. So you ask yourself, are Arsenal looking at a similar thing with Arteta? He stays, what are you going to do right now? If you bring someone else in with these players, what's going to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's the thing. You just kind of have no choice but to see what some changes in personnel, some perhaps forced promotions from the youth ranks end up doing, and you can't look at that over a 10-game, 13-game period. You have to look at that over a 38-game or even a year and a half. So,
do you want to know what it is too? One last thing. My missus has started to watch football. Okay, and for years,
I don't ever have to worry about that.
For years,
don't let us support Arsenal for fuck's sake.
For years, she had to sit and look at that wrinkly old bastard Wenger, and now we've got a young, attractive manager in. This is a reason for her to watch it. So I'm getting the support I need. So please, Arteta, pull it out of the fucking bag here.
If anyone ever says
you're not going to be pulling anything out,
I always say don't support Arsenal. Anybody, just don't pick Arsenal, because you are going to get fuck all joy out of Arsenal for the next decade at least.
Listen, guys, this time last year, where were Manchester United in the league? I'm going to turn happy Sophie, try and spin this in my PR world, my PR person.
I'm going to say 14th.
Okay.
They went on that run, didn't they?
They were 14th. And somehow Ole, who seems less inspired than Arteta, to be fair, okay? The dude looks like he's always he should be in like one of those, you know, Bagpuss, that old TV show, Bagpuss, like back in the day. Danny probably remembers it.
He has the look of someone who has screens at the back of his eyes and he's watching cartoons as the game is going on.
There you go. Somehow, Ole inspired Manchester United to finish 3rd and qualify for the Champions League. And in this Leicester lost to Fulham today.
We know how compressed the top 10 is, and that's what's so aggravating about the Wolves game is that
it's so annoying that we can't maximize it, Mike, and get results, because it is a topsy-turvy season. So all I'm saying is, if Ole, the uninspired guy at the wheel, can get Manchester United into a Champions League qualification spot, maybe there's still hope for us. I live in hope. I always do, because I love the club. It comes above and beyond the manager and the players. Always.
Arsenal, always Arsenal, as a matter of fact. A wise person, semi-wise person once said. We're going to wrap up. Arsenal are the contrarian team, though, when things look their darkest. I mean, I'm pretty sure when we did win that North London derby, we had just come off a couple of shit performances, and no one saw that coming. I may be wrong. There was a different time that we beat Tottenham a few years ago after losing to City before the international break, and I know that one happened. But we win games when everyone's expecting us to lose. We shit the bed when everyone's expecting us to dominate. So maybe, just maybe, there's a chance for Saturday. But we're going to wrap up. Thank you to the chat. Thank you, Laurie, Duncan, Low Key, Anik, PJ Nez with the hard truth coming. Arsenal fan circle in the house. Julian Salmon, Laura. I don't know if I mentioned Laurie Laker yet, but Hoggy, of course. Kevin Campbell, gotta love. He stuck through for the whole show this time because we know how much he wants to support. Soph, Matthew D'Souza, C-Law, and Paul Nell. Just a lot of people in the chat tonight. We appreciate your comments. Sophie, what's on the docket for you? You are a very active podcaster these days.
Yeah, our lockdown series continues. We've got Rebecca Lowe on today's show, which will be uploaded in a little bit, and a lot about the US. So you'll love
video?
That, Mike. And it's an audio. It's her day off, so we did audio. She's enjoying being in her pajamas today. But we will be doing a video.
I don't see why that would have caused you to not do video.
And then we've got a Kevin Says Q&A segment coming up this week too. Kevin, he's been defending Arteta and trying to make fans see things from a different point of view, and some agree with him and not. So you have an opportunity to fire your questions at him this week. We've got Mike from You Are My Arsenal coming up too, and cool US guy as well, and our fan forum as well later on this week. And then our Inside the Dressing Room with a couple more ex-players coming up, including Sean Gota and someone super fantastic for the holiday season, which I think everyone will enjoy.
Did you know that Mike, when he used to do You Are My Arsenal podcast, he named them like every episode's of Friends? It was the one where. Brilliant. Lovely bloke, Mike. Or Michael, whichever he is now.
I'm gonna make that little snip. I'm gonna cut that little part out.
And
start
it
it after you mentioned that it's the other Mike, not me. And that'll be our new entrance video.
I love that.
Danny, what are you? How can you? I guess you couldn't bring yourself to do a post game pod yesterday, but you're still going crazy with ABW after all these years. And as I've said many times to Eoin, to the folks from Arsenal New Zealand that I talked to over the weekend who are starting.
Oh, they're very nice job blokes, them too.
You are the most generous.
Shut up.
You can't take a compliment, but
I do.
Whether it's deserved or not, you are a friend to all Arsenal podcasters, and you don't have to be. So we love every time that you join us. And so, what are you up to?
I've been told that tomorrow. Oh, well, Carl is turning up for a show because he's not busy ruining people's journeys to work with the Underground. So it's Carl, Chris. In fact, every week I put in the WhatsApp who's available, and I have to chase Chris week after for months. I said, Carl, you can do the show. Then he went, all right. Chris went, oh, do you need me, Carl? I'm available. Fuck you, Carpenter, you shit. And then Josh said, oh, I'm free too. And I said, do you want me to anyone else? And they went, you can have the night off. You can just produce. Oh, there you go. There's Josh. Scumbags. I've been reduced to producing on my own fucking show.
I mean,
and where's Ellis? I mean,
I'm told I'm not needed. Good. Fuck 'em.
Danny's a legend, man. Are you serious?
Their podcast has 25 members, and 22 of them are surplus to requirements at this point. So.
He arranged the show with us like 3-4 weeks in advance, and then it gets to like the day of, and all of a sudden
Josh bails.
All forgotten.
Some of them don't even know they're a part of it.
No, I swear they don't. Some of them don't even know what podcasting is. Every week they're not available.
That's what happens when you deal with pirates and hipsters.
So if it wasn't for Josh, and I'll begrudgingly say and Chris and John is shut it, translucent fuck. And John is been out to do stuff now. John's back in it again, but Ellis is fucking useless. He's the ABW medic. He's no longer the podcaster. Every week, I say, "You coming on, Josh?" Ellis goes, "No, my mum's here." I said, "Well, come on with your mum then. She probably knows more about football than you do." Not having it, but yeah, we're fine. Thanks for asking, Mike.
Mike, you must be so happy you asked that question. By the way, I want to do a round table with all of you on the Highbury squad. Friday night drinks. Absolutely. Let's all just shoot the shit.
Absolutely. I'm always game. As soon as I possibly recover from this deathly disease that I'm pretty sure I may or may not have contracted, we'll do that. Danny, I just can't say how happy I am that I met this man. I mean, he's provided me more laughter and humor over the last 5 years, just personally, not even on the air. It's wonderful. So thank you for joining us. Appreciate it as always. Owen, great job with the topics tonight. The NousCast. We call it the is it Nous or News? I still can't get this
You made the fucking name up, man. I didn't know.
I know, but I didn't make the word up though. Like,
No.
Have
Well, look.
you shown the world your How to Say Owen's Name video?
yes, it actually showed. I showed. Yes, we've done that a number of times.
I've not seen it. How have I not seen it?
Or retweet it because it's awesome. It's very important.
Yes, and I finally it took that to finally learn how to say Owen the correct way. But Owen, lovely to share the controls with you tonight.
Yeah, that was
He's a really good host. I haven't been on the show before with you, and you do a great job. Plus, with that accent, you have your own show.
It covers up a lot of shit.
Own show, which is now what he'll talk about.
I do have my own show. You can see it there.
I know this. The Gooner Talk.
Gooner crack. I'm not that big yet. I want to get. There's about 6 lads follow me, and I think they've all had heavy brain trauma themselves in their life. So, but yeah, no, it's. Look, do you want to know what I'm finding? See, over the I used to look at you, Danny, and I was thinking, how can somebody's podcast be held to such high regard when they have such sort of little enthusiasm for actually doing them? I tell you what, buddy, I completely understand. After a few months, I would rather eat a cup of shit than do a podcast this week on my own channel. It's this. I don't know, man. But anyway, follow me. Yeah, that channel is the Gooner Crack. You can see it there. Go over and subscribe. We actually run a competition that's coming up to it now where we give away a free jersey to one of our subscribers every 8 weeks. So yeah, go over and subscribe and try and get yourself a jersey, which I don't really want to do. Christmas
is it an Arsenal shirt or can you choose the team?
I'm not revealing that.
Can I get a new Dortmund jersey?
Yeah, it's
a Real Madrid one.
It's any jersey of your choice in your size from this season. So
I'm gonna get a Soboslai jersey from whatever team he goes to in January that isn't us.
Pleasure, people. Pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, and please, last but least, please join us for our midweek interview pod. We do that every week or two, whenever we can get a top guest. And this week, we're really looking forward to welcoming in Ryan Rocastle.
Oh, so we're not top guests. I see.
He does this all the time. I keep telling him, stop insulting the talent.
I said we don't podcast when we can't get top guests. We're podcasting right now, hence theretofore
rumbled.
Yes. So, but no, Ryan's going to be joining us on Wednesday. Looking forward to finding out a little bit more about what he's been up to with the club, with his career, and of course talk about his father, who means everything to me. And that'll be Wednesday at 6:30 UK time, 1:30 Eastern time, and for you, Soph, that will be 10:30 Pacific time. You and Danny woke up at the same time today, by the way, and you're 8 hours apart.
I mean,
I'm not implying anything. I'm just saying.
+5 p.m.
+8. So, anyhow, thank you for joining us. This has been the Gooners podcast, NousCast with Eoin, and come on, you Gooners.